Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, dear colleagues and friends. Maybe it's a bit difficult to address some so-called philosophical matters just after lunch, but let's try anyway. This will be my challenge. Indeed, before focusing on the different scientific and technological matters that Jean-Jacques has introduced this morning, which are essential, of course, we have considered that it would be wise going back a bit to some, let's say, ideological foundations, which we called with some presumption, philosophy and cultural motivations of space exploration. And after all, I'm all the more comfortable in proposing this approach that I'm anything but an expert in this area. I've been working as a director of launches at CNES at the time of Ariane 5 developments, which is not exactly a philosophical position. And my current role of vice president of the Air and Space Academy, neither. Maybe this is precisely why I felt a deep interest in this. Well, I said I feel comfortable, at least I don't, and this is why I wrote down my speech in order not to forget too many things in this, because actually I'm out of my zone of comfort. In order to prepare this session last year, I, on behalf of the Academy, convened a workshop of some colleagues from the space sector, but also from philosophers, historians, sociologists, an explorer also, in order to discuss together and try to understand, in a nutshell, let's say, what drives us. What drives us to explore and to send probes and men up there. So it's not about discussing the pros and cons, the economical benefits and so on. It's about, you know, the cultural foundations. Us being the men and women in the street, the citizens, more than the scientists themselves or the engineers themselves, yourselves, ourselves, the specific motivations of which, if I can say, are more easily, immediately understandable. This reflection resulted in a report which, well, it's a 70 pages report that I'm trying to summarize in 10 minutes, which can be found on the conference website. You see the address on this side. It's very easy to reach, and you have also the names of the participants. You see their diversity, some of which are speakers today in this session. So at least in its automated robotic version, it's obvious that exploration responds above all to mental curiosity of man and the driving force of science. This is its primary and crucial role. This is common to all fundamental research. Nevertheless, it must be said that this sending of automated probes into the unknown and more humans' journey into space feed expectations, ambitions, and dreams of a very special kind. And this is what we wish to address today. In particular, let me propose the idea that usual reasons given for sending humans in space are probably right, even not always, but sometimes a bit superficial, or let's say incomplete. For instance, after all, why do states grant such prestige value to competing in space exploration? There are plenty of possible competitions. Why this competition? For sure, the difficulty, the brightness of the technical challenge, as Francis Rocard put it this morning, is a very important part of the explanation. But let's evoke also some more ancient roots in the imaginary of the so-called human adventure. Religious myths are at the root of this imagination. You will not see a lot of probes or vessels or rockets in this presentation. You will see maybe more gods, scientists, figures, or philosophers. So, you know the myth of Prometheus, Prometeo in Italian, you know, who was punished by gods, by Zeus, for having given humans not only the fire, but also knowledge, and moreover the desire for knowledge, including sometimes the resulting hybris, which is, let's say, the excess that men can commit in there when they come to use the knowledge and the fire. And about the fire, you see the striking fire from rocket engines, which are maybe one of the best illustrations of this Prometheus tendency. There is also Genesis, you see, with the famous tree of knowledge and what unfortunately happened. Pico della Mirandola, huh? In the 15th century, from this basis, I mean, both Greek myths and Christian, started illustrating humanism. I let you read this quote that I very recently found a few days ago in an Italian magazine. God says to Adamo, I placed you at the center of the world. And you see also the notion of the sky, space, is already there in a certain sense. So you have here humanism and hybris together. Maybe forever, this is a possible question. In this respect, with regard to the civilizational foundations handed down to us by Greece, Prometheus myth is leading human adventure through successive cosmic models and paradigms, whatever they are. To some extent, Prometheus survives Aristotle. And those modern physicists, cosmologists, and later on engineers, understanding and describing the laws of nature, then using them, building on them, make his heritage happen. Indeed, of course, Copernicus, Galileo, Giordano Bruno drove the Earth and consequently humankind out of their central Aristotelian position, Bruno bringing up the notion of plurality of worlds. You can see the apparent contradiction with Pico della Mirandola, but going into this would bring us too far. Copernicus and Pico della Mirandola were living more or less at the same time, and there are 10 years difference between them. More surprisingly, 4 centuries later, in the 1930s, the philosopher Husserl declared that the Earth doesn't move. Not because of any scientific ignorance, of course, but to underline, as Hannah Arendt did also, that man is intimately linked to Earth, forever rooted to it, and can only consider the universe from his point of view, his reference, his place. Another way to put it would be to say that we are earthlings before being humans. Nous sommes des terriens avant que d'être humains. Additionally, as a result of 20th century exploration, we have got now this feeling that the Earth is unique, at least for us, and that is our only sustainable, let's say, Noah's Ark, to be preserved at all costs. You heard about the famous overview effect felt by all astronauts. And it's also about the beauty of our planet seen from space. But for sure, the beauty of the cosmos itself, the wonder, la meraviglia, I prefer this word, is also a fundamental component of the call of the deep. Alongside Prometheus, there is something of maybe Apollo, you see, the god, not the program, or both, in this search. The wonder in front of infinity, even if, of course, planetary exploration, planetary travel, is nothing compared to the dimensions of the galaxy and the universe, but still. This aesthetic fascination is also an expression of man's fundamental dissatisfaction with his own finiteness. And this has also a lot to do with the quest of extraterrestrial life, I believe, for sure, which will be debated tonight. But the great first spacefaring nations did not develop the philosophical foundations for space exploration and for their competition only by remembering the classical myths and responding to the call of the infinite. The USA and Russia had each their own doxa, their own myths, so to say, which Xavier Pascoe will develop in a few minutes. To this, we must, of course, add literature. Science fiction, in particular, has mobilized imaginations. Giancarlo Genta, who is himself an SF writer and a writer in general, will develop this during the roundtable. Try to guess to what extent Prometheus, or maybe Apollo, are still floating around these modern myths. In any event, the need to preserve our planet, you know, this pale blue dot, as quoted by, is called by Carl Sagan at the times of the Voyager mission, 50 years ago, where life appeared and developed as a result of an extraordinary combination of circumstances. This need is perceived as greater than ever. Preservation. I just hope that this recent awareness of the fragility of our planet, shared by all of us, and the legitimate priority to environment preservation will not translate it into any disinterest in the universe, any sense of guilt about looking up and not always looking down. Indeed, in his exploration, humankind pursues a quest that is also the quest of its origin and of itself. This quest, when it comes to manned flight, is borne by a few astronauts sent by humanity in such a way that every human being can feel represented by them in this adventure, which is common, collective. Everyone explores by delegation. The presence of the body, to quote another philosopher, Michel Serres, a French one, very recent, is essential. I'll let you read the quote. Space tourism is also dealing with the physical presence. Wu Ji will express himself on this matter in a few minutes in the following speech, among other topics he will address, linking it to the enlightenments that space is bringing to humanity. Well, separately, to be honest, I have also some fear that the development of what is curiously called virtual reality undermine one day this fascination for exploring physically by delegation, immersed in the attraction of a metaverse and its marvelousness, maybe. Will the individual still see any interest in the laborious movements of the real astronaut? Or will or she turn away from the adventures of the real human body and even from real, let's say, physical, on-site robots? Who knows? The exploitation of the resources of the solar system, moon, asteroids, and quite physical indeed, could be an answer to this question. But going in this direction is also not necessarily self-evident. This is also an interesting matter to be debated from the point of view of philosophy, civilization, and ethics. It's obvious that ethical questions are infused in this reflection on exploration, not only in this session, but through all. There will be in the background of all what we will be saying. And in particular, Adrien Normier will have a short speech on that at the end of this session. Ethics have become, indeed, an important subject for Europe in particular, sometimes giving the impression that we in Europe prefer to think about what to avoid rather than what to undertake. But once Europe decides to move forward, I mean, concerning exploration into a more significant presence, fundamental principles, let's say its own philosophy, in order to take the right direction and a stable direction in the long term. So this will be necessary. Michel Pratt will be moderating the panel to come and will express his own ideas on that from the onset. These questions, as we can see, are not the prerogative of experts. Philosophy and literature provide elements for reflections, not answers, and the debate remains open, maybe without end. And I'm sure you have plenty of items in mind that I have not even addressed today in this short speech, but maybe they will in the other presentations. Anyway, taking part in this reflection sheds, I think, a more intense light on future choices than, let's say, a purely or mostly technocratic approach would do. Let me, to finish with, quote Saint-Exupéry as a conclusion. I love this sentence, you know, about people going together or sending together ships and dreaming about that. And by the way, Saint-Exupéry also wrote another book called Terre des Hommes, and this is not by chance that I'm mentioning it today. Thank you for your attention.